TDU Solar Crown now has 30 confirmed cars, and that's before any big reveals. Glance at the list and you'll see cars you're all but familiar with, such as the Ford Mustang and the McLaren 720S. But take a bit of a closer look and you'll probably wonder many things, like why is there a race car? Why are none of the cars right-hand drive? And have KT got these two cars the wrong way around? So today, let's remake all these cars in Forza Horizon 5 and have a chat about everything to do with Solar Crown's car list. Before we jump into what each specific car is, let's answer two questions people may wonder. Firstly, why are none of the cars right-hand drive? While I myself am British, most people might be wondering why this is a big deal in the first place. If you don't already know by now, Hong Kong also drives on the left. So while it may make sense that more exotic European and American cars are left-hand drive because they're imported in, for cars that come from countries that drive on the left, namely the UK and Japan, the cars we've been shown have all been left-hand drive. And for what is expected to be the most sim-like open-world racer in the modern era, why has this detail been omitted? Well, it all has to do with how cars are made for the game. There are two stages in which studios will actually need a real-world car. Firstly, modeling. While technically you don't need an actual car to make a game model, to laser scan a 3D model in, you do. As you know, Kiloton is based in France, a left-hand drive country. But that's not to say Solar Crown's models are all made in-house. As far as I'm aware, all the big racing games outsource their work. In fact, Forza, Need for Speed, and The Crew outsource some of their game models to the same Vietnamese art studio called Glass Egg. So chances are that both Kiloton and whoever they may outsource to are just using what they can get their hands on. The same goes for car sounds. Studios have to use whatever they can get their hands on. For example, Forza Horizon had to make do with whatever fans could bring down for them, and sometimes they're really not the greatest examples, like these two Toyota Supras are far from stock, even if so-called JDM fans want you to believe otherwise. It's such a massive task to source a car from a particular country over one that's already in the country of the model creator, especially when it's a lot of effort for not that much gain. So even if Test Drive Unlimited is known for that, Kiloton probably has other priorities than getting the steering wheel on the right side, like making the rest of the game. Since we're on the topic of how cars get to be in games, there's always the question of how many cars will Solar Crown have? It's an impossible question to answer for certain, but we can definitely take an educated guess. TDU is known for extreme quality, getting all the small details right, so a lot more time is spent on a model than say one from the Forza franchise. You have to remember that it doesn't just mean the quality of the car model though, it also means the car's features, character animations, and everything else. So if you're expecting Gran Turismo or Forza numbers from the total car count, you're basically setting yourself up for disappointment. Normally you'd guess how many cars are going to be included based upon previous games. However, Solar Crown doesn't quite have that luxury, with its legacy titles being over a decade old and under different management. But what Solar Crown does have is a trick up its sleeve: dealerships and the number of them. We know that Solar Crown will have 14 dealerships, 2 of which are exclusive for Lamborghini and Ferrari. TDU2 has an average of about 7 cars per dealership, give or take, if we don't include duplicate dealerships. And if we scaled that for Solar Crown, that'd be 98 cars, which actually doesn't sound like a lot, but as soon as that number rolls over to becoming a triple-digit number, I think most people wouldn't bat an eye. Given how much Nacon is putting into Solar Crown, I honestly think they could have a bit north of 8 cars per dealership for a grand total of about 120 cars. That's not to say every brand should get 8 cars when companies like Pagani barely make 3 models, whereas it's not abnormal to see brands with more diverse lineups such as Audi and BMW to get 2 saloons, a sports car, an SUV, and an older car as part of a generic racing game car list. Another reason why I think that could happen is because of the dealerships that we've been shown so far. Here's a shot of the classic car showroom in Central District, which has 4 cars shown in it, and if we also assume that the AC Cobra 427 is also part of it, that's already 5 in a dealership we can't see the entirety of. And that's in a showroom full of 60 odd cars, which are not exactly the core of TDU's DNA, but certainly still a part of it. With so much talk about how cars get into Solar Crown, let's start having a look at the ones that are already in. I honestly don't think there is a single car confirmed that would make for a better starting point than the Aston Martin DB11. Take a look at Test Drive Unlimited's legacy games. The first trailer for TDU1 featured a silver DB9, and you can't look at the Aston Martin 177 without immediately thinking of TDU2. Solar Crown changes it up though, from the iconic silver to a grey Aston Martin, to make it more in line with the Sharp's dull and monotone vibe. What do you mean I'm not allowed to say that? Wait, okay. Seriously though, I have no idea why they didn't continue the silver. Moving on to the streets car for the trailer, again remembering back to TDU1, racing with the DB9 was a gorgeous yellow Lamborghini Gallardo, so already a Huracan would have been the perfect embodiment of modern TDU. Elegant versus stylish. Instead though, we got this abomination of a vehicle. If it wasn't enough that the Land Rover Range Rover Sport SVR is a non-off-road oriented performance SUV that was supposed to be the DB11's rival, it's wrapped in an atrocious gold chrome paint livery, which would make for the ultimate wet dream for a FIFA YouTuber. Although in fairness, it's inspired by popular French automotive YouTuber Villebrequin, so I suppose it's kind of fair enough, but chrome car is always bad. So going back to the Huracan, we actually have one, the Performante, and since I love the Audi R8, I suppose I kinda have to like the Huracan to some degree. Sharing the same platform and engine, their all-drive and screaming V10s will always make them both feel at home on any game's car list. And that's a nice segue to a detail that I honestly don't think many people noticed in one of the newsletters. This is the Audi R8 that we have in Solar Crown. I personally prefer the first generation, but can you spot anything out of the ordinary on it? No? Well, that's okay, because the big thing about this car is that it's the Audi R8 RWS, meaning it's rear-wheel drive. So while that doesn't sound super weird, putting it into the context of the Lamborghini equivalent being all-wheel drive and the Audi equivalent, the literal founders of all-wheel drive on normal cars, has the rear-wheel drive one. You can't tell me that doesn't immediately feel a little weird. So how do I know this is the RWS variant in the first place? Firstly, the wheels are custom made for the RWS, and to my knowledge you can't actually get them on other R8s. But in case Solar Crown does let you do that, what really drove my realization home is this little badge down here that normally says Quattro, whereas in reality I think we can agree that this reads Audi Sport. And looking at the RWS in real life, we can see that it also says Audi Sport there too. After doing a bit of digging, it's definitely a more interesting car than I thought it'd be. It's a quote-unquote more driver-oriented car, as it shares 60% of its parts with the R8 competing in GT4, and with a bit more power than the base R8, only 999 of them being made, and the fact it's surprisingly never been in a racing game before, I actually can't believe Solar Crown's managed to sneak this pretty unique car past what is normally an observant fanbase. But now this makes me wonder, because I've just realized this is sounding an awful lot like another car Solar Crown's had confirmed for almost a year now, the Porsche 911R. Okay, now you're probably wondering why I'm talking about what is normally two pretty generic and ordinary cars, but there's a good reason. The Porsche 911R is quite a special version. It's essentially a GT3 without all the error bits. Combined with its manual gearbox, it's definitely more of a driver's car out of what is normally an otherwise, dare I say, boring car. Again, the 911R has not been in another game before, although that's a bit of a fib because Assetto Corsa does indeed feature it, but players mod other cars into that game and have probably never driven the car, to be brutally honest. Since we've now done a lot of talking about not that many cars, let's just take a quick break and go through some of the cars that really don't have much to be said about them. Essentially, they're cars you'll find in most other games. These are the Apollo Intenta Emozione, the Bugatti Chiron, the Chevrolet C1 Corvette, the Jaguar F-Type SVR, the Koenigsegg Regera, the McLaren 720S, the Mercedes-Benz G65 AMG, the Porsche 918 Spider, and the Porsche Cayenne Turbo. With that out of the way, there's an entire manufacturer we haven't talked about yet and has the most confirmed cars than any other brand. So could you guess what the brand is? Well, it definitely wasn't a brand that I was expecting to have much, but Ford already has 5 models, and honestly, they couldn't be more different from each other. Firstly, 2 muscle cars, both Mustang GTs, the 6th gen from the year 2018, whereas the other is a 1st gen fastback, just like the starter car of Test Drive Unlimited 2. Next, an F-150 Raptor, which we've been shown there's actual off-roading to be had with it and not just racing up smooth gravel roads for rally cars. Finally, 2 sports/supercars, being the new Ford GT and actually not the older Ford GT which TDU1 has on its cover. Instead, we have an entire GT40 Mark I, a dedicated race car for Le Mans. Well, I myself am sort of opposed to having track-only cars, let alone race cars, in a franchise that pioneered the open world genre in a time where other racing games were mostly all still track races. I suppose times have changed drastically, and the #1 map feature for all open world races is often a racetrack. Now, Solar Crown does actually have one, replacing Happy Valley Racecourse, which is a horse racing track in real life, with one for cars in-game. So as long as we can have some proper endurance races and hopefully a functional pit lane too, this could actually be a hell of a lot of fun, and I somewhat hope the time period correct Ferrari and Porsche also make their way to the game too. So while arguably that may not be very TDU, despite having a couple of funnies in the past, let's talk about something that very much is. Convertibles. It's such a small detail, but being able to actually move the roof completely changes the vibe of convertible cars. As of right now, Solar Crown currently has 2. The BMW i8 Roadster, which I actually didn't realize was a convertible in the CGI trailer, and the Mercedes-Benz SLK 55 AMG, returning from TDU2. Unfortunately, Horizon 5 technically has neither car, but I guess we can make do with the slightly newer generation of SLK 55. This was also our first proper glimpse at the interior customization from the manufacturers that Test Drive Unlimited is known for. In fact, you can make this very combination in TDU2 if you so wished. And now, speaking of returning cars from TDU2 and ones that Horizon 5 doesn't have, there's surprisingly only 3 cars that both car lists have that don't overlap. My personal favorite of the bunch is the Audi Q7 V12 TDI, one of the few SUVs I actually like despite its enormous size. We also have the Citroën 2CV, the lovable French car that can't hit 60 mph, and finally, yet another car that has never been in a game before, the W Motors Finnair Supersport. And if you're wondering why that name sounds so familiar, it's probably because of its little sister, the Lycan Supersport, which hasn't been confirmed for Solar Crown. Our penultimate returning car that we'll be talking about is one we'll actually be getting 2 of in Solar Crown, the Volkswagen Beetle 1303S and some sort of buggy Beetle. As a Herbie fanatic, I mean, where else do you think this 53 is coming from? This is super cool to see, since it really suits the tropical island aesthetic. These Beetles seem to be different models from each other, so I really don't think the buggy is from upgrades that you can put onto it. Rather, it's more likely from a wreck, which I talked more about in this video. Next up, the Lamborghini Diablo, which may be an SV variant, was one of the first confirmed cars for Solar Crown. We actually see the Diablo quite a lot in other games though, so why am I talking about it? Well, on a confirmed car list of 30 cars, the Diablo is hilariously the only 90s car. If I'm not mistaken, classics in previous TDU games were typically 60s or 70s cars, with a couple of exceptions, so I'm pretty curious to see what other retro cars KT have brought to Solar Crown. What I'm super happy about though is the fact my favorite American car is confirmed for Solar Crown. This is the Dodge Viper SRT track pack, a little different to what we normally get in other racing games, although to be honest it's not that much different, but comically large V10, yes please. Now we're at our final car, and I've been keeping it till last for a very good reason. Please welcome the Nissan 370Z. Again. I'm sort of sad Solar Crown's breaking TDU's streak of always having the most modern Z in-game, but what's more important is taking a look at where every car on this list comes from. This is the only Asian car on the list, and while Test Drive Unlimited is notorious for ignoring Asian cars, only having a couple of models per game, there's no way they're making a racing game set in Asia and in the modern era without more to come. Notice how I'm not saying JDM or Japanese though. That's because there's a plethora of Asian cars that'd be perfect for the game. How about ripping up Titan Reservoir in a Hyundai i20N or Toyota GR Yaris, or take to the track with a Neo EP9 or a Spark Owl? If classic cars cruising's more your style, how about the Toyota 2000 GT, a known James Bond car, or perhaps something a bit spicier like a Mazda Cosmo? I could probably bore you to death with fitting cars, but I'm sure Kiloton haven't pulled a The Crew 2, and hopefully there'll be TDU1's 8 Asian cars. While that may be the last car, that's not to say we don't have more confirmed things. In the first newsletter, Solar Crown confirmed the addition of electric cars, even though we haven't seen one yet. Also, there are 2 confirmed nameplates, a Guerra from Koenigsegg and Carrera from Porsche. It's not fair to randomly pick a model, as a name like Carrera could mean anything from a Carrera GT to a 911 Carrera. Despite having an entire dealership confirmed, Ferrari has not confirmed a single model yet. The same goes for Bentley, which we saw the keys for back in 2021. And this brown muscle car at the back also hasn't been identified, but considering how older muscle cars don't really have unique silhouettes, especially when compared to a 2CV, I don't think we'll ever know for certain until it's revealed. So that's all 30 confirmed cars in Solar Crown as of making this video. As you can see, it's a decent and diverse car list, and it's only going to get bigger as more is revealed to us. I must admit, when I first came up with this video's idea, I was thinking it would be pretty quick and easy, but honestly, I couldn't have been more wrong. So while I hate asking, if you don't mind hitting the funny white subscribe button, it really does help the channel a lot. And speaking of helping the channel, if you missed Solar Crown's house newsletter, check out this video here. Otherwise, have a nice rest of the week, and I'll see you soon. Bye!